This is True Colors of Cybersecurity. Powered by CISOSHARE in Southern California to be enjoyed globally, we discuss the unspoken truth in the cybersecurity industry. Check out our other episodes at cisoshare.com/cyber-security-podcast.
Welcome to another episode of True Colors of Cybersecurity. I'm your host, Celine, and today we sat down with CISOSHARE's president and CEO, Mike Gentile. The topic we decided to tackle today was 10 common mistakes in the cybersecurity industry. A little bit of background on how we decided to approach this. While we were brainstorming the topic, we thought about talking about mistakes that companies make on a program level. But why not approach the mistake from an individual level? People new to cybersecurity make mistakes, but so do the people who are established in the discipline. So we decided that this episode would be dedicated to tackling 5 common mistakes that newcomers to the discipline make, as well as 5 pitfalls that established security professionals fall into. That way anyone can listen to the episode and come away with something. Whether you're new to cybersecurity, thinking about a career in the industry, or are well established in the field, hopefully we can shed some light or share some perspective about what we're talking about. We started with a question of confidence, specifically when newcomers come into something as complex and potentially confusing as cybersecurity.
I think that the biggest thing that we see is that really, we talked about it a lot, but security is very nebulous and confusing and it's very intimidating. And I think the 100% the biggest mistake that people make in cybersecurity is that they don't believe in themselves that they can actually perform in cybersecurity.
Right.
I would give it 120% if that was the case. And you can sense it when you actually talk to someone very quickly, whether they have that level of confidence in that they think that they can do it or they can't do it. And where that becomes really problematic is that in security, and especially if you're working in an organization like ours, where we're providing guidance to people, or even in the common organization, cybersecurity is looked on by other people to get advice from the cybersecurity team about those types of concepts. And almost everyone that you're talking to in the business or within an organization, they are straight up that they don't understand what's going on with security.
Right.
So if you're talking to them from a perspective of not feeling confident, that's a big red flag, because that is something that even if someone doesn't understand from a security perspective, they are going to pick up on that. And then they're like, oh crap, my own security team doesn't know what the heck they're doing. And so I think that is the biggest thing. The other point on that is that 100%, I like my 100% today. I think for no matter what, when you come to a job interview, that's another place where if you're trying to enter in, if you don't believe in yourself, it's really, really going to show. And it can be the difference between being able to get a job or not get a job just on that criteria. Yeah. Further, there's been many times where someone that doesn't have the experience but exudes confidence, we're a little unique. I like to think at CISOSHARE with kind of how our learning and teaching culture and our acceptance of bringing on people that have the right skills, even if they don't necessarily have the right resume. But I think even in general, especially in a time where a lot of people are looking for help, if you can exude that confidence, even if you don't necessarily have the hard skills, it's gonna melt away a lot of those deficiencies and still enable you to have a possibility at a job.
So confidence isn't just about thinking that you're the smartest person in the room. That's another mistake that people make that we touch on a little bit later. Confidence in this case has more to do with being confident in your own abilities, most specifically in your ability to learn, which led us to another one of the mistakes that people often make in cybersecurity: not asking the right questions.
If you don't ask good questions, you're not going to be able to really get more information to help you understand something. And so I hear a lot of times from people, I can't, I can never understand this. But yet they never ask a question. Right. Or I see in sessions where they're supposed to be learning of something, but I can see that they're multitasking or working on something else.
Yeah.
And you can tell the people in a session that are actually engaged in a session and are might not understand everything, but are starting to ask questions about how to get that understanding. And I mean, I would ask, anyone that's listening to this, in the next couple of meetings that you have, just sit around and look around the room and you can pick out those people. I know I do almost every time.
Yeah.
And I can always with very high accuracy, understand the people that are going to be effective in that meeting, going out of it, or on that session.
Right.
And I think that asking questions is proof that you're listening, for one, and two, that you're asking those questions and pushing yourself to be able to learn what you need in order to be successful.
This idea of questions also brought us to a related mistake that people make in both cybersecurity and businesses as a whole, which is lack of preparation.
It's the same thing that's really frustrating. If you're meeting with someone, if you're going on an interview, prepare for it. Think forward. Are people going to perceive me? Are you coming, my biggest pet peeve that I always communicate, if you come to a meeting with me or for an interview and you don't have something to write on, even if you have a photographic memory, which people do, you just don't look prepared to come and talk with me. You're not ready. You haven't thought it forward. If I ask you, I'll generally ask people for their resume, and if they don't have it, seriously, you're coming to talk to me on an interview and you don't have it, because I can tell you that I've reviewed your resume before I'm talking with you.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, any person that's ever come in here, and so you're not ready. You haven't looked at our company, but you want a job here. You haven't looked at our website. I mean, seriously. And it's the same thing when you're in a meeting, you're preparing for a meeting. Let's say that you have the job and you if you're going into that meeting, and so I think that this also pushes forward if you're going to a meeting. If you're going to a meeting, you need to understand the objective of the meeting. You need to understand who's going to be in the meeting. You need to understand what are the players, what are the dynamics. All this is work that you can do, so that you're not puking in the meeting. You're puking before on your own. And the more prepared you are, the better you're going to be able to ask more informed questions. If you don't have all the answers, you're going to be able to relate to your audience and understand more, and you're going to be better prepared to ask better questions. That's the biggest thing. So the reason generally people don't ask good questions is because they haven't done any of those things that I just talked about. Now, here's the thing that really it kind of pisses me off, is that everyone always says they can't find jobs and they can't find this and they can't find that. This stuff is easy. This is not hard to do that. Anyone can go to a company's website and check out what's going on.
Yeah.
So
we jumped back around the list, making our way towards the idea of education. During our conversation, we talked a little bit about the way that a formal degree or educational background can influence the way newcomers to cybersecurity perform. He shared some interesting facts, namely that having a college degree or even an MBA in cybersecurity doesn't guarantee that you'll be a valuable security resource to a business.
Some major organizations just released that, they're not making it a requirement to have college degrees anymore. The bottom line is, just because you have a college degree does not make you usable to me in a business setting. And that has been proven time and time again. And some of this I don't blame on students, or people that have recently graduated and probably have a big loan payment on school. I blame this to our system and our schools, but the bottom line is, I would probably say 60 to 80% of the people that come in with a college degree, and inclusive in that is also MBAs, cannot write at a level that their writing is not picked up in a negative context by those people that are reading it. So it basically becomes the story instead of what they're trying to say in the message. Either they can't even deliver the message, or it's so convoluted and mixed up with how they've actually written it, or they have spelling errors in there or grammatical errors in there that it can't convey the message. And
newcomers often make the mistake of thinking that their degree guarantees a level of success. And on the flip side, people that don't have the degrees often feel discouraged or underqualified to take on the job.
Now, the problem is, and also the opportunity is that a lot of times these folks are given this raw deal on thinking just because they graduate that they can actually write in a way. And I'm not like saying you need to, be able to write some type of poem or something. I'm being able to need to be able to write at like a 6th grade level.
Yeah.
And in a way that there's 2 sentences in a paragraph. There's only one concept in a paragraph. All these simple items that we learn in an early day. And I wasn't a great student. All of these things that we learn early on, very, very early on, that it just takes a little bit of time and effort in order to be able to accomplish. And also fixing these items, I mean, they shouldn't exist. They just shouldn't happen if you truly care about what you're producing.
You'll take the time, go edit it, look it over.
Yes. And in line, on top of that, the other thing is that those items are so unbelievably costly to a business. So one of the things that we push down, a lot of times, and I also am guilty of all of these things, I kind of get away from that, but I am guilty of these things. I try to make an effort to fix them only because I know that how crushing they can be. But something like a simple spelling mistake, it's so common for us, and this could be a mistake on its own, to just say, I'll fix that later.
Yeah.
I just mess this up and I just want to get this out, so I'll fix that later. So often it doesn't get fixed later. And what happens is it goes up to the next person that's going to review it. At least that's what happens here, at CISOSHARE. And then they have to actually spend the time to fix that. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they say, that'll get caught later. And then it goes up to the next person. And we keep paying for that mistake that could have been fixed quicker over and over and over again. And then often it doesn't even get fixed. It just ends up going off, in a way that it's just such a problem. So we're talking about the mistakes again. As it relates to college, biggest mistake is don't think because you've gone to college or you have advanced education that you're going to be effective at writing in a business setting.
Right.
The flip to that is you really need to believe that if you want to write appropriately and be a star writer, I mean, the bar is very low just in organizational business settings. Just put in the time and it's going to happen.
In a related vein, we touched on the next mistake on our list, overvaluing hard skills over soft skills. We mentioned a few times that cybersecurity has a reputation for being a difficult subject, and one that most people don't understand from a business sense. But loading yourself up on hard skills and technical knowledge isn't going to solve the problem. Like Mike mentioned with writing, all the knowledge in the world wouldn't be able to help you as a professional if you can't effectively communicate what you know.
When we're talking about that, it's really around just understanding, hey, what is a firewall? What is least privilege?
Yeah.
What are these hard things, and it's probably more expertise or knowledge, rather than specific skills. Again, it ties into people not understanding security. So they put so much value on understanding, if I understand what this thing is, then I'm going to be more valuable. But at the same time, they can't write a sentence that explains what a firewall is at a 6th grade level.
Right.
So a lot of times people think if they have that knowledge that people are going to value that. And time again, I've found that I'll take people that can actually communicate and explain an idea far more than I'll take someone with deep hard skills if they don't have those communication skills. Because what happens is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, with some of the mistakes that I think senior folks use, is that basically you put a force field around yourself. If you can't explain ideas or communicate ideas, if you have the best level of knowledge in the world and you can't explain it or communicate it or teach others about it, that's of no value to me.
Yeah.
I'd rather take someone that doesn't understand, but that's going to work hard to learn and interface with others and then can communicate that, especially if they also didn't know, because they're going to understand the perspective of people they're teaching. That's going to be stronger with me all the time, every time.
The final mistake we touched on was coming into cybersecurity without a plan and following old security training methodologies. We talk specifically about things like the CISSP and other similar certifications, acknowledging that this is as much a mistake made by an individual as it is a flaw in the cybersecurity industry.
This one also, I think it's a mistake that young entrants fall into. But it's really, again, a big mistake that our discipline has made. Right now, our training systems for cybersecurity are insufficient. They don't align to actually being successful in specific job roles. They will teach you, what's the CIA triad in security. No one gives a rat's ass about that in a business setting. In fact, the CIA triad is one of the most confusing ass things that we have in our discipline because it's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well, what the hell does that mean? Right. And it can mean a lot of different things. The integrity word is probably the one that torches people the most because people, if you don't understand security, they think that integrity, what do you mean integrity? Our system, integrity of do I have integrity? Yeah. Integrity of our systems. The other one that's just a complete disaster is availability. Availability. So should disaster recovery go in the cybersecurity program or wait a second, business continuity is in a different group. What do you mean availability? And I get it. And also I'm not taking anything away from the leaders and the innovators that created all that stuff. Yeah. It's fantastic. It just doesn't work today. Yeah. And the problem we have is that everybody uses that as the base training and the base systems we have, and it's got to stop. And that's what we're trying to implement with what we're doing with our learning and teaching culture here. Maybe we're going to teach you, how to not piss an executive off in a session before we teach you the CIA triad. And that's because you're going to get kicked out of that meeting if you're a jackass and don't have those skills before you can ever explain it. Yeah. And that's what we see time and time again. And that's why we're focusing on it. So people think that, okay, I'm going to get the biggest train wreck we have right now is people going in and getting their cybersecurity MBAs, which is giving them huge ass loans. And there's very good teachers. Don't get me wrong, this is great foundational knowledge. Right. But then they come to us and they can't write a sentence or get through a meeting. And I'm not saying that to be mean to anybody. I'm saying, and again, I gave you percentages, and it probably even was me when I started as well. I'm number 12,000 or whatever on my CISSP back before they had a prep guide. I was Sean Harris was around when I was a young buck. I think she was writing her first draft of that book, which was excellent. But if you're coming in, I'm not saying to maybe not go for that level of training. But what I find much more useful is doing on-the-job interns, and not BS interns where people come and have you mowing the lawn and doing stupid stuff. Right. Actually active interns. And that's one of the movements that we're really pushing here, is that we're really focusing on creating applicable job situations, not spend your summer here and make a little money and then go back and say, oh, it was cool. They have a kegerator in the break room. I'm ready for that. Actually coming and starting to prepare what it's like in active job situations. The sooner that you can do that, you're going to be far more effective and better prepared to then learn the foundation knowledge that you have. And what I would suggest too is when you build that plan, that you actually build it from the perspective of people that are where you want to go, and talk to people, ask people what they think. My thing is going to tell you to go and try a bunch of stuff. And then here's another thing that I would recommend. We found over the years that the skill set breaks into really just two groups. If you're going to work in cybersecurity, you're going to basically be more on the process or analytical, risk-based kind of policy side of the house, which is maybe working on risk management programs and governance, risk, and compliance, which is another dumb term in our industry, but that'll kind of get you there. Or you're going to go to more of a technical track, right? Where you're going to be more interested in penetration testing or things that are very, very technical, managing specific security technologies. Now, if you really get to a point where you can connect the dots, you might be able to operate in both of those disciplines. But in the beginning, before you know what your aptitude is, try and build a plan that lets you experience both of them, and you'll kind of find most of the time that you'll fall into one bucket or the other. And so don't make a decision before, but if you don't know where you want to go, then make your plan to experience both.
Right.
With an on the job kind of situation.
Gotcha. While Mike recognizes that these certifications are incredibly important, he completed the CISSP certification before they even had prep guides. They don't cover the skills or ideas that set a candidate up for success within a specific job role.
Experience, and you've been around this block a little bit, even if you haven't been around the block, if you've, done a little jog to the next house on your block, you're going to have some experience in security, and there's going to be recruiters calling you, and, all of a sudden you're Mariah Carey now, you think you're believing your own bullshit. That's probably one of the best, pieces of advice I've got from my mentors. It's like, don't believe your own bullshit, right, Mike. And I don't, because I know I have a lot more to learn in this discipline, but there's a lot of people that have a little bit of experience, and those 25 recruiters calling them every day makes them feel really like they're better than everyone else around them. And that's a problem. That's a problem just because that leads to putting that force field around you, and which is going to make you ineffective, especially in organizations. So what I'm seeing a lot in organizations now is those people that fall into that space, they're put in the belly of organizations, and they're wrapped around by everybody else. And how ineffective is that? They only let people that can present to the clients and can present to people, do that because, what's his name? He knows everything, or she knows everything, but that's stupid. So that's one really big problem, is that, we all have to focus on learning and teaching, and that moves away from that.
Arrogance doesn't get anyone anywhere. It doesn't help move the discipline forward. It won't help you adequately train anyone genuinely interested in learning about security, and you'll often end up more inefficient in an organization than anything else. This arrogance and overconfidence also leads to another mistake: becoming a one-person consultancy. This one isn't just a problem of burning out or getting overwhelmed by the amount of work you think you can do. It starts to become a question of integrity and being able to effectively deliver on services as a security leader for the clients that you end up taking on.
Starting to cross up their integrity and do things like, something really popular right now is being a vCISO. So I'm a security leader for an organization for 1 year, or say for a long time. You know what? Why don't I just go out on my own? And oftentimes, if people haven't done that before, they go off on their own and they take that first job and be that virtual security officer. I'm just going to take one and it's easy.
Yeah.
And the calls don't stop to them as they're working on the one that's, you know what? I got another one that comes. Oh, wow. I can work 2. I can work 3. I can work 4. I can work 5. I know so many times, and all those folks that I've interfaced with, there's probably some that I don't know about. Most of the time, we all know when you do that stuff. We all know. But there's no way that you can be providing to your clients if you're in that model. And you're making a lot of money. You can make a lot of money and you can make it happen, but you're crossing up your integrity. And that's happening a lot right now because organizations are so desperate and that they're just taking people in. And all of a sudden, you took this job in cybersecurity and you're trying to do the right thing. And now all of a sudden you're basically operating as a fraud. And you're doing way more than you should be taking on, and you're not operating in the right way. And I think that it's just not cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the biggest mistake.
Another problem that we touched on, as somewhat of a foil to the idea of consultancies fueled by ego and a desire for more money, was the mistake of not negotiating well enough for yourself as an experienced security resource. The way companies are structured around technology and security have changed. In the event of a breach, huge parts of a company can be affected. Stock prices can go down, brand perception is shaken. This means security roles are vital. Experienced security leaders should be aware of this and use this to negotiate things to their advantage.
Hard, especially if you're a security leader at an organization. If you're really that type of person, and it's hard. There's a lot of stuff you're going to have to deal with, and especially if you do work a deal. So let's say that you're going and you've done your preparation, and these guys, the whole goal, an equity group just swooped up this company, and they their goal is to push the company to be an IPO. Well, if they want to push this company to be an IPO, negotiate that up front. Learn about how to actually get a piece of that. Now, the flip side of that is if they're going for an IPO, they're going to be doing cost constraints and all kinds of fun stuff that's going to limit you for when you go on and get budget. So I'm just saying, start really truly understanding the business. And I think that people can wield a lot more power than they understand, and they choose to not necessarily learn those things, which is cool. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I'm just telling you, especially where right now there's a lot of demand for security. Why not take advantage of those things? And it's not hard to do. It might takes to do some learning in order to do it, but I think that it's important. To figure it out.
Right. One of the next problems we touched on reflected one that we brought up in the list of mistakes that newcomers make to security: focusing on hard skills rather than soft skills. Just as much as new faces in cybersecurity can alienate themselves or focus on all the wrong things, so too can the professionals that have already established themselves in their roles. Ultimately, it ties back to the idea of your ego. It also led nicely into a discussion about the last mistake, which was sticking to legacy security dogma and practices, rather than trying something new and trying to adapt security to the modern needs and problems that businesses face.
Everyone associates, it's kind of a universal problem, but it has a little bit of different side effects, right? So,
right.
If I focus on those hard skills too much as someone that not understands them, it's probably just because I don't understand them, and I'm taught that's what I need to get in order to be effective in this industry.
Right.
On the other side of it is, a lot of times if you value yourself, so unbelievably because you're the smartest security girl in the room, or security guy in the room, then I think that, that's when you put that force field around you, right, and you completely limit yourself. It's what the most valuable skill in the room is: your ability to learn and then teach. If you have security experience and you can learn and teach quickly still, wow, you're the person that we want on our team. And, and that's what we look for. But I think that just valuing that because you're the smartest person in the room, and you're going to have tons of recruiters, and you're also going to be able to pull the wool over your eyes. We see this all the time too. Oh, you got this big resume, so you keep moving jobs, and you just carry the force field from one job to another job to another job and to another job. And that's fine and dandy, and you're probably going to do pretty well, but you're going to end up retiring. And what did you really do in this discipline? What a disappointment. You could do so much more.
Right.
So.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the last thing that we have on the list is choosing to continue with legacy security as opposed to making a difference, which kind of touches on what you just said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very much that. I think if you think that things are operating properly right now, both for an organization and with all the breaches and all that,
right,
let's keep going as we're going. I personally, and I try to associate myself with people that believe that it is a broken system right now, and it's all of our responsibility, and the people that I want to work with responsibility to try to do our best to actually improve the model, which for the most part, the core tenets of how we do things in cybersecurity haven't changed since they were initially designed.
Right.
But organizations have changed a lot. The technology has changed a lot. Everything else is changing at such a rapid pace. Yet our approach and all this legacy security dogma that was maybe great at a time, still doesn't change. So I think that you can choose to keep focusing on those things, and you're probably going to be successful for a while even. But I think it's a big mistake. And I think that it takes away from us to really help all change the world together and fight the war that unfortunately we're all in here in this cybersecurity mess right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all of the mistakes that we have listed. Is there anything that you kind of want people to walk away from this episode with, besides all the advice for all these mistakes that people made?
I think that the big thing is that really this is a complex discipline and a complex field. So everyone's making mistakes. I make countless mistakes, even on stuff that I've done before, and I think that the key is just believe in yourself to do the right thing. And have the confidence that you can do it if you want to push the effort and you have the skills that are necessary, to really hit it out of the park here and push it and then focus on making change. If you want to just come into this industry and kind of sit around, it's probably not the right industry for you. But if you want a fun industry where it's constantly changing, you can constantly be learning and building skills and working with people, then this is probably the right choice. And if you fail, some of the best advice I have ever gotten is, as you take on more complex things, just take it day by day, right? Take it step by step, try and have a plan, but take it step by step on moving closer to the prize, and you're going to do pretty darn good.
And that's our episode of True Colors of Cybersecurity. We hope that going over the mistakes that come up so often in different organizations was helpful. Maybe you've made a few of these mistakes before, or maybe you've seen it in some of the people you've worked with. Either way, we hope that you've learned something from our insight, or that we've inspired you to make a change in the way that you approach things. If you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions for a future episode, we would love to hear it. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn at CISOSHARE. You can learn more about the podcast at CISOSHARE.com/cybersecurity podcast. We'll talk to you all next time.